Welcome to Breaking Down Mental Health with Dr. Jones. In these educational videos, Dr. Jones will discuss mental health diagnosis, clinical supervision, using technology in counseling, multiculturalism, and many other topics to help you get a healthy understanding of why mental health is important. Please don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification button if you enjoy these videos. In this video, we want to discuss the topic of theory and history when it comes to telemental health counseling. It's always important to know where things began and where things came from in order for you to get a better understanding of that topic. So we want to spend a little bit time today talking about this theory of telemental health counseling and also get a better picture of where we're going in this field. So as a part of this learning objectives, there's 6 different learning objectives that we're going to look at today. The first one is just having a basic understanding and defining telemental health counseling. There are so many different definitions that are out there for this modality of counseling, and so we want to make sure we have a good definition and a good working definition as we use different terms throughout this video. Also, we'll talk about the different types of telemental health counseling. It has changed rapidly over the past 20 years, and so we want to make sure that we're using the terminology that's most recognized by insurance companies and others in the professional field, so they will better understand that as well. Also, we want to look at the effectiveness of telemental health counseling. We're seeing more and more research that is coming out to help us to see that this is not a fad, that this is a type of counseling that will stay around for a long time. And so we want to see what this effectiveness looks like when you're looking at people in an online environment. Also, we want to look at some of the potential concerns that people have when it comes to telemental health counseling. And so it's important for us to know these concerns so we'll know how to address them when those clients come into your office. Also, some myths on internet-based counseling. We want to debunk some of those myths and see what the truth is about that. And also look at some of the advantages and disadvantages of telemental health counseling. I think it's important for us on any modality of counseling that we're doing that we need to look at what are some of the pros of using that modality, but also what are some things that are going to be disadvantages if we use that. And that gives us a better understanding of how to use this in the right way. And so we're going to begin there today. And so here is an article that came out just a couple of years ago, and I want to read this to you, but I want to kind of break it down after I read this quote from this article. This article came from the Virtual Relationships and Systematic Practices in the Digital Era, and this is that's the name of the article, and this is what it says. It says, information and communication technology (ICTs) deeply changed the way people communicate in their professional and personal lives, and created new relational models based on a network society. The use of ICTs influences not only family life and relationships, but it introduced new interactional models in a wide range of human activities and social practices, including health services and education. So let's break this down, because when I read this this definition, or read this from that article, it helped me to understand online relationships and just in such a better way. It talks about the fact that any type of communication technology that we're using, and specifically as we're talking about online technologies, they're there to help facilitate communication. And the problem with that is, it facilitates communication, there are still certain ways that communication can get lost in that process. And so technology is another way for us to be able to communicate with each other, to stay connected with each other. And so this aspect of communication, it has changed the way we have relationships. It says we have new relationship models based on a network society. And I think what they're meaning by that is that the way we look at relationships is significantly different now than it was 5, 10, 15 years ago. We look at relationships different now because our networks that we are a part of are based upon technology. And so if you think about social media, just in general, we are connected to different individuals based on certain things, and we have our own created network because of that. And so we become a network society in these online environments that we're in. And if you've ever been on Facebook or Instagram or whatever the case, whatever social media you use, you begin to notice that a lot of things that you're thinking are being echoed right back to you because of the people in our network. And so we've kind of got a listening chamber of people surrounding us who sound just like us, and technology has made it so we have these online relationships where we're only listening to people who sound just like us, which that could be some danger in that. And because of this, it instructs or introduces a new way for us to interact with each other. So as we're broaching this topic today of understanding online relationships, and this is history of telemental health counseling, it's important for us to be able to understand that these are real relationships. These are relationships that have depth to them. It looks different from what it did, we'll say 5, 10 years ago. But the important part we need to realize is that because of these online relationships, it has changed the way we network with people. It changed the way we communicate with each other, and it has changed our relationships in a way that we did not know was happening. And so it's important for us to understand that as we begin to talk about counseling in an online environment. So as we're defining telemental health counseling, there have been multiple terminologies that have been out there. So I would say the official or the term that's used the most in research is telemental health counseling, and that's the term I'll use throughout this video. And any other time you hear me talking about this modality, I'm going to use the term telemental health counseling. There are other names out there for it. Some people will call it technology assisted counseling. Some people call it online counseling or video therapy, internet counseling, telecounseling. There's so many different terms out there. And all these are basically still pointing to the same thing, where basically we are using technology to be able to provide counseling services to someone else. But the working definition or the working term I want to use throughout this is telemental health counseling. Now, when we think about the types of telemental health counseling, there are two main types that we have out there. One is what we call the synchronous methods of counseling, and one is called asynchronous methods. Now, when it comes to synchronous methods, this is basically when the counseling involves the client and the therapist are in the same environment at the exact same time. And so let's think about video. So if I'm in a video-based session, they can see me, I can see them. We're both in that same space at the same time. We may not be in the same space geographically, but the video has brought us together in the same space, and so our connection is synchronous right now. Then if we think about chat-based, this may be a thing where we're using some type of messenger or whatever the case may be, or just a chat for a chat software. Once again, we're both in that space, so we've got a set time where we are both sending messages back and forth, and that's considered to be synchronous. Text-based, once again, we've got a set time for this. We're both sending text messages back and forth at the exact same time because we want to be able to deal with stuff in real time that way. And also telephone based, which has been around since like the 1950s, where we've had people going back and forth on the phone talking about things, and so that synchronous method is there. And so I would say the majority of people that I work with, they end up practicing in synchronous methods. But one thing that has been growing quite a bit over the past 5 years or so is the asynchronous methods. And this is counseling that does not involve the client and therapist being there at the same time. There are so many different groups that are popping up that are really big into email-based counseling. And this is where the client sends out a problem that they're working through. They send it to the therapist. The therapist has a certain amount of time that they're going to get back to them. They email back to the client. And you have this email-based thing where they never see each other face-to-face ever. Everything is done through email. Or also text-based, where I send my therapist a text message for them to read. They read that text message. They may get back to me that same day, maybe within an hour. But I know when I send it, I'm not going to get an immediate response, and so we consider that asynchronous. And so, for the purpose of what we're talking about today, it's important that both of these modalities do have some pros and cons to both of them, but for the synchronous methods, that's the one I lean more towards when it comes to the way I approach telemental health counseling. But once again, asynchronous methods are viable, they're usable for many people, and so I do want to talk about that in this video as well. So when we begin to think about the effectiveness of telemental health counseling, one of the first things that come up is we have to think about what modality or what disorders is it effective with. Now, this is not an exhaustive list, but these are some of the main things that we can see that telemental health counseling has been working well with. So, for example, depression, anxiety, addictions, insomnia. These are some things specific from this article that recently came out, talks about that what was showing people or finding the telemental health counseling being very effective in these different disorders. Now, I've used telemental health counseling on multiple different things. I've worked with people with trauma as well, and seen some great results from it. And so the whole basic point of this slide is to help us to see that we are able to do great work in an online environment, in a synchronous method or even an asynchronous method, being able to work with some of these different disorders that people are dealing with. But on these next few slides, we're going to kind of show you a few other studies that are out there that talk about the importance or the effectiveness of telemental health counseling. This next one that came out in 2013, it talks about the effects of online psychotherapy outlasted the results of face-to-face counseling. And so in the study, there was a study divided a group of 62 patients in half, and it found that depression was eased in about 53% of those given online therapy compared to 50% of those who had in-person counseling. And it says 3 months after the counseling was, everything was completed, the study, 57% of online patients showed no sign of depression compared to 42% with conventional therapy. And so to me that's positive. That's a very good healthy thing to think about, that you have this percentage of people who use online or face-to-face to use online therapy, and it was just as effective, if not better, than a traditional face-to-face counseling. And so it's important for us to see that it can work in that way. Also, online therapy significantly lowered the number of hospital visits among veterans. And so just another study here. It was a 4-year study that came through Johns Hopkins, and they included 100,000 veterans in this study. And the number of days that patients were hospitalized dropped by 25% if they chose online counseling. And this is slightly higher than the number of hospital visits experienced by patients who use face-to-face counseling. So in this one, where we're looking at working with veterans, you saw a very close relationship between those who did online therapy and those who did traditional face-to-face counseling. And so once again, we see more places where it's showing that these two modalities work very similar and work very well with each other. Also, just as we think about some just random facts about telemental health counseling, and to me are some things that will help us to kind of get a better understanding of who's involved with this modality. Right now, when the term online counseling is typed in, which I think that the public uses that term a lot more, over 1.5 billion Google hits in less than a second when you're searching for that term online counseling. It's a hot topic. It's something that people are looking for. Even prior to COVID, we saw individuals want to be who were doing online therapy, and this was something they were specifically looking for because it helped them to be able to get the therapy they needed and was more convenient for them. But once we had COVID come in, we saw more and more people specifically looking for that. We saw counseling offices shutting down and 100% going online, and the whole purpose of it was so that they could be able to reach this population of people who may have not been comfortable doing this before. And so many people were in some ways forced into doing telemental health counseling, whether they wanted to do it or not. But the great thing is that the research out there is showing that it is still just as effective as traditional face-to-face counseling. We're also seeing that psychiatrists and speech and language pathologists, they've accepted this practice of telemental health counseling a while ago just because the shortage they have there. Also, we're noticing that of the individuals requesting help through online counseling, about 68% of them have never been in therapy before. And that's a huge deal, the deal that you have that percentage of people who've never been in therapy before, but they'll try it. And this statistic came pre-COVID, that about almost nearly 70% of people who went in therapy, the first time they ever did it was through online therapy, and they had never been in therapy before. I think that's a big deal. And also just that the COVID pandemic expanded access to care and reduced patient demand on facilities. And so people did not have to go into the counseling office to get the help they needed. And we're seeing that many places are still not open, and some places are open on a limited basis. And we've seen some people who, as therapists, have gone 100% online with their practice. And so because of that, I think this helps us to see that this is something, once again, that's not a fad and that will not be going away anytime soon. So when we begin to look at potential clientele concerns, there's a few things we want to look at that we need to be concerned about. One is like, how might the person's computer skills, knowledge, platform, and internet access affect the therapy they're a part of? And so it's important for us to understand that not everyone has a great understanding of technology. And if that's the case, this may not be the biggest or the best, or it may not be the best thing for them to be a part of. If they have a difficult time using their computer or not knowing how to log on and use a browser, whatever the case may be, then that may be something that we might consider and say, hey, this may not be the best thing for you, and it may be have to refer someplace else. And so we need to be concerned about the other person's computer skills prior to working with them, so we can know if this is going to be the best mode for them to use or not. Also, just wondering, how knowledgeable is the person about online communication and relationships? Like, are they able to live within the boundaries that are set by their therapist for telemental health counseling? And so, when we talk about these online boundaries, they have to realize that people are not available all the time. And so they may log on thinking, oh, I can get someone 24/7, and that's not the case, So just how knowledgeable are they about this relationship, this online relationship they're going to be having with this therapist, and how communication works? And so just kind of talking to them through that process. Also about the availability of services within a geographical area. I still live in a rural area where we still have dial-up right now, and so because of that, I think there's still I think, if I'm not mistaken, around 15 to 17% of people in the U.S. still have dial-up services, and because of that, that can be a concern for them being able to connect online. But not only just with the internet services being slow, also the availability of a therapist. And so if I can't find a therapist who's able to work with me or works with my insurance, that can be a concern that we need to look at. And so also just having that infrastructure for them to be able to connect, those can be two big things we need to deal with. Also, this perceived need for anonymity, that people want their privacy, and there's nothing wrong with having privacy, but there are pieces of information that we still need from our clients. We need to know where they're located. We need to know their name. We need a good address for them. We need to be able to have an emergency contact, things of that nature. And so some people want to come online and do online work, but in their mind are thinking, I don't have to give that information, and that can become an ethical issue. That can become a problem for them. And so just this perceived need for anonymity, that people don't want people to know I'm coming in for therapy, and this online therapy or telemental health counseling gives them a way to be able to do this, but there's still information that has to be given in order for this to work out correctly. Also, just a lack of transportation. it becomes an issue. I know when I worked in community mental health, that was one of the bigger issues for many of my clients, is that many of them did not have transportation. I also live in an area where there's not public transportation. There may literally maybe one Uber in the entire city. And so because of that, this lack of transportation becomes a concern for clients. And so telemental health actually can help out in that way to help people to be able to connect with the therapist, because they may not be able to drive into a place. And so that could be a concern for the client, but telemental health counseling definitely takes care of that. Also, just for the convenience of it. I know for many people, when it comes to, I'm talking about mental health professionals, many of them do not like having late office hours because they don't want to be alone with the client that time of night. But being able to offer online hours from the convenience of your own home or through telemental health, it gives you the ability to be able to meet with people at different times of the day that you wouldn't necessarily be comfortable doing that from your office. So the convenience of it could be a concern for the client, but telemental health counseling kind of helps that convenience piece of it for you and for them as well. Also, cost. When you think about running an online practice or doing telemental health counseling, there's obviously software that you need to purchase, computers, things of that nature. But it's possible, and I know several people who have their own online practice, and the cost of it for them ends up making it a lot lower. They have much lower overhead, which allows them to be able to offer some pro bono services and also discount some of their costs and services towards clients, because we do have clients out there who are not able to afford therapy. And so because of this can be a lower cost way to provide services, sometimes that cost benefit is passed on to the client as well. And so that can help alleviate some of these concerns that clients have. And also just age. For telemental health counseling, since it is different, for some individuals, their age could be a factor in them coming in to get therapy. And once again, finding the right therapist, this may be a good way for them to connect with a therapist that fits their age group. Not everyone likes working with children, and so telemental health counseling may be a great way for them to be able to connect with a child therapist, and do it through telemental health. And so that may be a good way to do that. And so these are just a few of the client concerns that we want to think about, and also see how telemental health counseling can help alleviate some of these concerns that they have. Next, we just want to look at some 10 myths that's based on internet-based 10 myths of internet-based counseling. The first one basically just says that online therapy is impossible. There's still a segment of individuals in the public and also in the mental health field who feel like the online therapy is just not possible. And I think what they mean by that is that I think they're looking at effectiveness as well. I think they're looking at just people not being comfortable with using it. But I think this ideology has changed quite a bit over the past few years. That more and more people are practicing online, and because more people are practicing online, because more graduate schools are teaching about telemental health as a part of their program, it's helping people see that you can do online therapy and do it very effectively. And so this ideology is quickly dying. Also, the online therapy consists almost exclusively of email exchanges. Well, that is really the way it kind of got started. Where a lot of online therapy was just based on email, and so it really has not been until I would say the past 10 years where we start using video therapy a lot more, because we just didn't have that technology to be able to do it. It's interesting as we look, if we think just in the past 10 years, how far technology has gone, where it's for a lot of people, when we think about high-speed internet or fiber optic internet and how fast that is, that was not something that was available to the masses just even 10 years ago, and now it's pretty simple. I mean, that many people from their cell phones, they're able to stream, have unlimited data, and able to do whole sessions this way. And so I just think that this is something, once again, it's an ideology that is dying off, and that is changing. That email therapy, it is one way of doing it, but there's so much more other ways you can do as well. Also saying text only is an inadequate way to convey a richness of human experience. For some clients, they enjoyed only doing text-based therapy. They may not feel comfortable yet going into a counseling office, so the ability to be able to walk into to only send text, that it may be help them to get comfortable and to build rapport with the therapist first, and then after that it helps that they can then grow into a relationship where they do feel like going in and talking to it. So you can definitely get a very close relationship with someone through text only, and so we have come a long way since this, but this is one of those things that some people do believe is that you can't really have a great experience through text only counseling. But just from the experiences I've seen and from other therapists I've worked with and talked to, it's no longer an issue. Also, suicide prevention and crisis intervention are impossible online. I would disagree with that. We've had suicide prevention hotlines for years, and most of the time those hotlines are being manned by individuals who don't have advanced degrees, and so we can do crisis intervention, we can do suicide prevention online as well. I think there's some more hoops you have to jump through, and I think there's some different things to ways you have to prepare yourself in order for it to happen, but to simply say that's impossible is definitely false. Also, effective online counseling for serious disorders is not possible. Once again, I would have agreed with this several years ago, that this is something you really couldn't do. But just recently seeing how much different types of therapy can be done online is absolutely amazing. For those of you who are familiar with EMDR and working with clients who have trauma, there is software out there specifically for people who are dealing with trauma and PTSD, and they can do it all online. And so I would have never thought that would have been able to happen, but that's happening, and it's happening on a daily basis. And so online counseling can be effective with multiple disorders that people are going through. Once again, it's about the training you have in that modality and also your training you have in telemental health as well. Also, another thing people say is that geography doesn't matter when providing mental health services online. Now, there's been a lot of evolution with this myth over the years. That geography does end up mattering. We are seeing a lot of things changing in the mental health world, specifically for licensed professional counselors. We're seeing it for psychologists. We're seeing it for social workers as well. We're seeing it for a lot of people in the mental health field, that we're starting to see more and more states allowing clinicians to practice across state lines. Now, that's not everywhere. So right now, it still is important for us to realize that geography does matter. And so people always will come up with different questions. Well, what if I'm on vacation and this happens? Or what if this person's traveling for work and this is happening? It's important for us to realize geography still does make a difference. We need to make sure we are in contact with the licensing board on where we are at the time physically of the appointment, and also with our clients where they are physically at the time of the appointment. And most of the codes of ethics will echo that exact same sentiment, because in this basically you're looking at practicing in a state or in a place where you are not licensed, and so you want to make sure that you don't do that. And so geography does make a big difference. Also, it says online clinical work always involves one counselor or therapist working with individuals in groups. Once again, this is something that's definitely not true. I've seen some great counselors who've been able to work together maybe it's through marriage counseling, maybe it's through a counseling intensive, and they've been able to do this online, but they're doing it with individuals in groups, and it's worked out well. Once again, the reason why is because technology has changed so much and so rapidly. And so this used to be true. It used to be true that you really couldn't do group work or use multiple therapists together, but now this is no longer true. And so technology has changed things so much in the way in which we approach this. Also, it says online principles are the same as offline principles, and that's just not true. The reality of this is that online therapy is not for every therapist, and online therapy is not for every client. And it's important for us to know this because some people are really great therapists, but they're not great therapists online. Just like some people are not really great therapists on ground, but they may do a great job online. Or you may have a client who can connect with you well on ground, but not connect with you well online. And so the principles are not the same. It's a different modality. It's not as simple as just turning on your computer, jumping online, and then beginning a session through video. There's some work you need to do to make sure you're able to pick up on some of the body language and things of that nature that you'll lose in this online environment. And so the principles are not the same. Also, some people say that online training and peer supervision are ineffective. And once again, this is something that's definitely not true. There is such a great growth of online training programs for counseling and for supervision, and it's effective. Well, it used to be a thing that we would think you could only get good training and peer supervision in a face-to-face environment, but there's so much great software that's out there now where you have individuals who are able to work together in this online environment and get to everything they need, and they're learning great things in this process because they're using technology. And so this internet-based telemental health counseling is helping so much in this as well. And also, it says any clinician experienced in face-to-face work can do online work, and I think we've talked about that a little bit already. Just basically, that's not true because you need to have the right type of training in this area if you want to be effective in this area. And so, since it is a different environment, that a different amount of training has to be done for this area. So let's look at some of the advantages of telemental health counseling. One of the great advantages we see is just access of services to underserved populations. And for me, I think this is a really important thing to look at. There are several underserved populations throughout the United States who do not have access to counselors who share their point of view, that can understand the things that they're going through, and sometimes they are limited by who is in their area. But whenever I am using telemental health counseling, this gives them a much broader a base of people to work with. And so if I was a client, I could literally work with anybody in my state that's trained to do telemental health counseling, and now that opens the doors up for me significantly. And so I'm not stuck going to that one person in town who may not be trained in the modality I want to work with. Maybe it's possible I'm from the LGBTQ population, and I'm wanting someone who that understands that population well, and the only person in my town that is not competent in that area. Well, you wouldn't want to do more damage. So I would want that person to be able to connect with another therapist in another area that can help them and can work with them, and telemental health counseling gives them the ability to do that. For the area that I'm in, there are very few people of color who are doing therapy, and there are people of color who are looking for a therapist. And so when they're seeking out people of color to do therapy, there's not men in their area. And so this gives them access to services because of telemental health counseling. Also, this is flexibility of time. We've talked about this a little bit, that there is a advantage there. It does make things a lot more flexible, that I will feel a lot more safe doing a nighttime session from my home versus doing it in an office place. And so that flexibility of time makes it a lot more convenient for the client. They don't have to worry about traveling as much. I don't have to worry about traveling, and so it's not a bad thing at all. Also, the fact that it does not have to occur in real time. We are seeing a lot more people practicing an asynchronous methods that we talked about earlier. And so because of that, the sessions don't have to occur in real time. It can be a thing where someone sends an email, someone responds to that email a day or two later, but the person still has the ability to be able to connect with their therapist in the way they need to. Also, this decreased client defensiveness due to perceived anonymity. You know, a lot of times when people go into therapy, one of the big things is having to walk into an office, sit down in a lobby with people they don't know, and now they have to meet a therapist who they don't know and to build that relationship with them. And so defensiveness goes down when I can use telemental health counseling because now I do have a little bit of anonymity. I can be who I want to be in front of my therapist, but I don't have to worry about going into an office, and so that helps out quite a bit. And also, this privacy leads to less counseling-related stigma. Now, we still have a great stigma when it comes to counseling in general. But once again, if I can have the privacy of doing counseling from my own home, then this helps out quite a bit, and then that stigma can eventually go away because it normalizes being in counseling and working with a telemental health counselor. Also, the ease of documenting sessions. There are some great electronic health records that are out there that you can use to help you to be able to document sessions. So we can get away from the paper and pencil and get into using these electronic documents. And it's so much easier to pull up people's documents and things of that nature. If an audit happens, it's a lot easier, and all that's made possible because of telemental health counseling. And so that's been a big advantage of that. Another advantage is just the availability of a wide variety of online support groups. Support groups are growing rapidly, and I think that's a great thing. That maybe I have an eating disorder or whatever the case may be, and I'm just looking for a support group to go to. There's so many of those that are online now, and that is made possible because of telemental health. And so it's important for us to realize that people are searching and people are looking for ways to connect with others who are dealing with some of the same things that they are dealing with, but they may not be able to do that in their own community. And so these online support groups are a real big help for them to be able to make the connections they need. Also, lower cost to the practitioner and client. We've talked about that a little bit already, but just the lower overhead that can happen because of not necessarily having to have a brick and mortar office in order to see a client. The increased flexibility of services. I'm able to offer more services online, be able to do group counseling, be able to do individual counseling, things of that nature. And if I'm in an area in an office space where I don't have enough room to do a group counseling session, but I can offer that online, it gives me more opportunity to offer more services. So telemental health has that advantage. And also, the increased popularity of social networks is driving more people to be more comfortable with communicating online. There are so many people online. I believe over 60% of the population, the global population, is online. And so because of that, people are used to communicating this way. And so getting them to do therapy online does not become a stretch because they're so used to being in an online environment. So what about disadvantages? What are some of the disadvantages we need to consider when it comes to telemental health? One is just the difficulty of determining the qualifications of online therapists. There are so many companies that are popping up online about doing online therapy. The problem is you don't always know what the qualifications are of these people. Some of them may be life coaches, and I don't have anything against life coaches, but when we look at the qualification, if someone is looking specifically for counseling and the people that are providing services aren't providing the qualifications, that can make it difficult for a client because they don't know exactly where to go to find out this information. So on my website, do I have the information, or do I even have a website in general? And if I do I have the information so the client can make a determination of what my training is in this area? Also, problems ensuring confidentiality of sensitive information disclosed in online counseling sessions. And basically what this is helping us to see is that it doesn't make a difference what environment that we're in, whether we're on ground or online. It is that you can never guarantee 100% confidentiality. There's always someone out there trying to learn how to hack, whether it's in person or online. And so we just got to let people know that nothing is completely confidential. We can do our best. We can work towards confidentiality as best as we possibly can, but nothing is 100% safe. And so that sounds kind of like a gloom and doom, but that is our reality with what level of technology we have now. That is our reality. Also, that lack of spontaneity. I know that being on ground, there are certain things I can do spontaneously in my office. I can jump down the floor with the kid and do some things that way with them. But sometimes that lack of spontaneity goes away when I'm in an online environment. So I'm not able to do what I'm used to doing in that way. And also the danger that online counseling may increase the likelihood of internet addiction. The statistics are already saying that people are online an average of 7 hours a day. I know college students who are online up to 14 to 20 hours a day. And so if someone's already has this internet addiction, then this is probably not the best thing for them. So that could definitely be a disadvantage for them if they already have a problem being on the computer and being on the internet. This could definitely be a disadvantage for them. And also just the need for basic computer skills and a great internet connection. Once again, there are a lot of people who are not competent when it comes to computers, and that includes therapists as well. And so if you don't have those competent computer literacy skills to be able to do some light troubleshooting, if you don't have a strong internet connection, this may not be the best thing for you to use. And also, there's a couple more things on disadvantages is the possibility of sudden, unexpected termination of therapy. Sometimes technology just doesn't work. That happens. This happened to me multiple times. So you need to be prepared for that. You can be on a computer, internet can drop, the power goes out. So what do you do in those times when that happens? Those are things you have to be thinking about and preparing for. And so that is a disadvantage, because if I'm in an on-ground session, the power goes out, I can turn on a candle or whatever, a light candle, and I can continue the session. But once again, how will you handle that in the online environment? Or the difficulty in dealing with client emergencies that may arise. Once again, if I'm in an on-ground session and a client has an emergency, it's a lot easier for me to deal with it because I'm right there in the room with them. But if my client is online, then I've got to make sure I've got myself set up already to deal with that crisis they're going through. Like, do I have the right phone numbers? Do I know what location they're in? Things of that nature. And so notice I put this difficult. It's not impossible, but it is difficult because it's a lot more work you have to do on your end. Also, limited access to nonverbal cues. That we do lose some nonverbal cues in the online environment, and I don't think these things are so bad that we're not able to work with clients in this environment. But it's something we have to be aware of, that we do lose some nonverbal cues, and so we have to learn how to start picking up on those better when we start to notice those are going away. And also difficulty verifying client identity. When someone comes to my office, I know that's who they are because I see the same face every single time. I can check their ID the first time and I know that's who they are. But if I'm online with someone and the video goes out and I talk to them on the phone, how do I know this is the same person? Or if I've only done email therapy with someone, how do I know who I'm talking to? Those are some things we need to think about, and so verifying client identity can be a bit of an issue there. Well, I hope that this video kind of gave you a better understanding of where we've come from with technology, where we're going with technology, and also just how using online therapy, using telemental health counseling, it is effective, and we're seeing that. But even with it being effective, there are some advantages and disadvantages of this modality that we need to be mindful of if this is an area that we want to practice in. So hopefully it's been helpful to you in understanding this concept a little bit better.